My name is Bobbie. I'm 35 years old. And on the afternoon my sister tried to humiliate me in front of 200 people at her six-figure wedding, she had no idea I held a secret powerful enough to dismantle our entire family's reputation. It happened at the Langston Estate in upstate New York. The kind of wedding venue where white horses trotted through trimmed hedges and staff wore earpieces like Secret Service. The ceremony alone cost more than I make in 3 years. I knew from the moment I stepped onto the crushed white gravel path in my $80 thrifted dress that I didn't belong. Not by their standards. But I wasn't there for approval, I was there to finish what started 20 years ago. To everyone else in that hall, my sister Whitney was the golden child. Whitney, with her Stanford business degree. Whitney, with her 1.4 million Instagram followers, engagement to the heir of a hotel dynasty, and a closet that looked like a Bloomingdale's catalog. She was always the one who made it. I was the one they whispered about. The dropout. The quiet one. The one Dad used to call our family's unfortunate footnote. What they didn't know was that for the past 4 years, I've been building something in silence. Something powerful, hidden in plain sight. But I'll get to that. That day, the seating chart placed me at table 17, near the speakers but nowhere close to the stage. Not that I expected better. I hadn't spoken to Whitney in over a year, not since our mother's funeral when she told me, straight-faced, "Don't cry too loud, Bobbie. You were always her disappointment, not her daughter." I ate my salad in silence and tried to ignore the looks. The side eyes. The pity stares. Even my own aunt, with her pearl necklace and Botox smile, leaned over to whisper, "It's so good of you to show up." Very brave, considering everything. Everything? She meant the bankruptcy. The fact that I once lived out of my car. The divorce. The rumors about my mental stability. That's all anyone in my family ever saw when they looked at me, a mess they were embarrassed to claim. And then the lights dimmed. The MC's voice echoed across the gold-draped ballroom, and now, a surprise tribute from our bride, to the people who shaped her journey. The massive LED screen behind the stage came alive. Whitney's face filled the frame. "Before I walk into the next chapter of my life," her voice purred, "I want to honor those who helped me become who I am, and one special person who taught me the most valuable lesson, what not to become." A pause. Then, a photo of me popped on screen, taken from years ago, disheveled, unflattering, clearly picked to mock. Next to it, Bobbie. Divorced. Bankrupt. Childless. Lives alone. Laughter rippled through the room. "She taught me," Whitney's voice continued, "that not everyone deserves a seat at the table. And some people, well, they're just cautionary tales." I didn't move. I didn't cry. I just stared at that screen, then at the smiling faces, the glasses raised in smug toasts, the pride on my father's face, like cruelty was an achievement. And in that moment, I realized something. They still thought I was powerless. But I wasn't. They didn't know that for years, while I worked menial jobs and got mocked for my silence, I was building a platform. A digital archive. I started recording conversations, saving documents, tracking lies. I didn't do it for revenge. I did it because I knew, one day, someone would push me too far. That day had arrived. I stood up. Walked slowly toward the front of the ballroom. A few people glanced over, confused. Others smirked, waiting for the scene. Whitney noticed me. Her perfect brow twitched. "Bobbie," she said into the mic, "this really isn't." But I was already at the stage. I pulled out my phone. And with one tap, I started the live stream. The ballroom screen flickered. The tribute video vanished. Replaced with a simple message. "Live, the truth about the Bennett family." Gasps. Confused murmurs. The view count exploded instantly. 10,000. 25. Then over 100,000. I raised the mic. My hands didn't shake. My name is Bobbie Bennett. And since we're all here pretending to celebrate love and truth, I thought I'd share a few truths of my own. The silence was so complete, I could hear someone set down their wine glass. You want to talk about cautionary tales? I said, turning to face Whitney. Let's talk about what really happens behind the Bennett family's perfect photos. Let's talk about the hush money Dad paid to silence a former employee who tried to report harassment. I clicked again. On screen appeared a scanned document, an NDA. Gregory Bennett's signature clearly visible. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. My father's face flushed red. He half stood. That's enough. No, Dad, I said, my voice calm. You've controlled the narrative long enough. Now it's my turn. I wasn't even close to finished. I didn't wait for permission. Not from the man who once told me, Bobbie, you don't get to make waves. Be invisible or be gone. I'd lived in that shadow long enough. Now, I was using their spotlight to burn everything false to the ground. The ballroom was ice quiet. Only the soft hum of the screen filled the air as I pulled up the second file. An email thread, dated 3 years ago. It was from Whitney, sent from her official company account, to a PR firm in LA. On the screen, I zoomed in to highlight one line. If the nonprofit refuses to retract the abuse claims, we threaten litigation. Let's bury it. No press is good press. The crowd gasped. One of the servers dropped a glass. I continued. That email, I said, turning slightly to the audience, was about a woman named Lila Ortiz. She worked as a part-time cleaner at Bennett Properties for 7 years. She filed a complaint after being harassed by one of the board members. But instead of investigating it, Whitney tried to silence her. And succeeded. I pointed to the screen again. She took the settlement. Disappeared. No justice. But the audio I'm about to play? That never disappeared. The ballroom screen faded into a black background. Then a voice, Whitney's voice, came through. Why should I care what some cleaning woman says? It's her word against ours. And trust me, no one's going to believe her over a Bennett. People were no longer just murmuring. They were whispering. Pointing. Ethan, the groom, Whitney's fiancé, stood to the side, hands shoved deep into his pockets, face pale. Whitney tried to laugh it off. Are we really doing this, Bobbie? This is your moment, huh? Ruining your own sister's wedding? Outing family drama like a TMZ reporter? I turned to her, and for the first time in my life, I felt taller than her. No, Whitney. This isn't drama. It's a reckoning. Then I took a slow breath. And you know what the best part is? None of this is illegal. Because every single document, every audio clip, every transfer of information was acquired within full compliance of state and federal law. I had a team verify it. Twice. Her mouth opened. Then closed. From the corner of my eye, I saw movement. My father, Gregory, was storming toward the stage. But before he could reach me, another figure stepped forward. A man in a slate-gray suit. Sharp, composed, and calm. Greg, he said, voice quiet but commanding. I wouldn't recommend that. Gregory stopped cold. Daniel Wu, the man said, turning toward the audience. Former son-in-law of the Bennetts. Current CTO of Veritas Corp and cybersecurity advisor for multiple NGOs. There was a gasp in the crowd. Everyone in tech knew Daniel. He wasn't just successful, he was legendary. He looked directly at Gregory. Bobbie's not alone. She never was. You just never saw her. Whitney laughed again, but it cracked slightly. Oh, so you're working with your ex now, Bobbie? This is what you've been up to? I didn't answer that. Instead, I brought up the final slide for the night. A pie chart. Clean. Professional. Titled, Anonymous Financial Backers of the Healing Sisterhood Initiative. That's my nonprofit, I said to the crowd. We provide emergency legal, psychological, and housing support to survivors of family-based emotional abuse. A familiar logo appeared beneath the chart. And last year, we partnered with FEMA and the Department of Justice to launch a tri-state pilot program. One that Whitney tried to block, by sending a cease and desist letter claiming the term healing sisterhood was defamatory to women in traditional values families. I looked around. Today, this stream has reached 1.8 million live viewers. It's mirrored across 3 platforms. If any of you think you can bury this, go ahead. Try. For a long beat, the ballroom was still. Then Avery. My cousin Avery, not to be confused with Whitney, stood up from table 3. She had been silent the whole night, sipping rose and dodging the family's politics. But now she stood tall, her voice clear. I worked in HR at Bennett Holdings until last summer. I resigned when I found out Whitney doctored time-off records to fire single mothers on the basis of attendance. People turned to her. She said they made the office look unprofessional. That they were too emotional to keep up. The dam was breaking. More people stood up. A former marketing exec. A junior developer. Even one of the staff from the hotel. One by one, they backed me. And Whitney? She was still standing at the altar, bouquet limp in her hand, makeup slowly starting to crack under the weight of heat and shame. Ethan stepped forward. Is it true? He asked her softly. What? Ethan. All of it. Whitney's silence was louder than any scream. Then he turned, handed the mic back to the MC, and walked straight out of the ballroom without another word. The sound of Ethan's footsteps fading out of the ballroom echoed louder than any of the applause Whitney had expected. Her groom was gone. Her future husband, who had smiled so politely through family dinners, endured our father's egotistical monologues, and laughed along with Whitney's backhanded compliments, had walked away without a word. And this time, there was no edit button. No PR team waiting in the wings. Whitney turned slowly back to the crowd. Her smile had vanished completely, replaced by a tight, trembling line. This is character assassination, she said, almost choking on the words. It's jealousy. You've all seen what Bobbie's done. She's taken one day, my day, and poisoned it. I took a slow step forward. No, Whitney, I said, keeping my voice steady. You poisoned it. You built your entire image on the bodies of people you thought would stay silent. You called me a failure. You mocked me. You erased me from family photos. And you weren't content to just leave me behind, you needed to stomp on me, in public, to feel taller. I could feel my heart beating against my ribs like a drum, but my voice didn't waver. You don't get to weaponize silence anymore. I turned back to the crowd, to the people, once allies of my parents, once strangers to me, now seeing the truth in full. My name is Bobbie Bennett. But online, I'm known as Solace 81. A ripple of realization moved through the room. A few people gasped. The name had meaning. Solace 81 was the anonymous founder of Healing Sisterhood, a figure many believed was an older woman, a counselor, or maybe even a collective. No one ever guessed it was me. I started a podcast and a YouTube channel 4 years ago, speaking out about trauma, gaslighting, and the invisible chains of emotional abuse. I never used my face. Never gave interviews. I wanted the stories to matter more than the face behind them. I've been speaking for the voiceless. And today, I spoke for myself. Suddenly, a woman in the crowd raised her hand, unusual in a wedding, but this wasn't a wedding anymore. You're Solace 81, she asked softly, disbelief in her voice. You saved my niece's life. Her voice cracked. She found your podcast after her dad kicked her out. She was going to, she stopped, pressing a hand to her lips. But she didn't. Because of you. Tears welled up in my eyes. I nodded, not trusting my voice for a moment. Whitney tried to interrupt. You really think anyone here cares about your little therapy group? This was supposed to be the most important day of my life. And then Daniel, still standing off to the side, finally stepped forward again. Calm. Collected. Bobbie has spent the last 4 years saving lives. Including mine, he said. After our divorce, I hit rock bottom. Not because of her, but because of the guilt I carried. For not protecting her when I should have. She built something that has now helped over 70,000 women. I couldn't live with being part of the group that once broke her. So I joined her instead. Another murmur rippled across the room. One of the journalists, someone who had been covering the wedding for a luxury bridal magazine, was now typing furiously on her phone, undoubtedly live posting the most unexpected exposé of the season. I faced Whitney one last time. This is your wedding, Whitney. And I didn't ruin it. You did. I just brought the mirror. She opened her mouth to respond. But nothing came out. And then the ballroom doors opened again. This time, my father stepped through. He'd left earlier, after the first recordings aired. But now he stood in the back, face unreadable, flanked by 2 of his lawyers. I didn't flinch. I didn't need to. He walked slowly to the front of the room, gaze fixed directly on me. For a second, I felt like I was 11 again, standing in the corner of our mansion after being scolded for not finishing my calculus assignment fast enough. But I wasn't that girl anymore. He stopped a few feet from me. You made your point, he said quietly. I hope you're satisfied. I blinked. Satisfied? No. I'm not looking for satisfaction. I wanted truth. And I got it. A pause. Then I added, what you do with it is up to you. But from now on, you don't get to erase me. Not in your stories. Not in your speeches. Not in your deals. I exist. And I matter. He looked like he wanted to say something else, but then he simply nodded. Once. Then turned and walked out. No goodbye. No apology. Just silence, the kind that comes from someone who finally sees the truth and knows they've lost the ability to control it. As the guests began to rise from their seats, unsure whether the event was still happening, I quietly left the stage. I didn't need applause. I didn't want validation. I just wanted air. Outside, the sky was a soft shade of orange. Autumn had finally arrived. I stepped onto the gravel path, slipped my phone into my bag, and exhaled. Daniel caught up to me a few seconds later. You okay? He asked, his voice gentle. I nodded. She'll recover, I said softly. They all will. But not the same. Not untouched. And that's what they needed. He smiled, a small one. You didn't destroy them. You unmasked them. We walked together in silence, toward the parking lot. No press. No flashbulbs. Just footsteps on gravel and the faint hum of the Healing Sisterhood live stream still trending worldwide. The next morning, I woke up to a phone that wouldn't stop vibrating. 56 missed calls. Over 300 unread messages. And a trending hashtag #BobbieSpeaks. I sat up in my small apartment, sunlight cutting through the blinds and warming the hardwood floor. For a moment, I just stared at my screen, blinking. I hadn't gone to sleep until nearly 4 a.m., after checking the backup servers, responding to my legal team's texts, and making sure our Healing Sisterhood platform hadn't crashed from the traffic. It hadn't. In fact, it had held up better than expected. Daniel had built it himself. And the numbers? By sunrise, the wedding video had surpassed 9 million views across 3 platforms. I checked the analytics, nearly 500,000 comments, most from women. Some thanking me. Some sharing their own stories. Some simply saying, I thought I was alone. I wasn't just trending. I was triggering a national conversation. And I was still in sweatpants, barefoot, sitting cross-legged on the same couch my family once mocked because it was secondhand. There was a knock at the door. I flinched. No one ever knocked this early unless it was bad news. I wrapped my robe tighter and peered through the peephole. Avery. Not Whitney, Avery, our cousin. I opened the door. She looked like she hadn't slept either. Her long auburn hair was pulled into a messy bun, and her blazer hung a little loose on her shoulders. I shouldn't have come unannounced, she said quickly. But I didn't know how else to say this. I stepped aside. Come in. She walked in slowly, glancing at the cozy but cramped living room. She took in the bookshelf lined with trauma theory and emotional abuse literature. The Healing Sisterhood logo on my laptop screen. The stack of handwritten letters from women in halfway homes. You weren't exaggerating, she said softly. You really built this. No, I replied. I rebuilt myself. This just came with it. Avery sank onto the edge of the couch and looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Yesterday, she said, you didn't just call them out. You cracked something open. You made me realize how many times I stood by and said nothing. I nodded, letting her speak. I used to think silence was loyalty. Now I see it was compliance. That hit harder than I expected. We sat in silence for a few seconds before she added, Whitney hasn't come out of the hotel room. Her PR team quit this morning. Ethan deleted every wedding post from his Instagram. I didn't say anything. It wasn't glee I felt. It wasn't even revenge. It was relief. Not because they were suffering, but because the weight I'd carried for so long had finally shifted onto the shoulders it belonged to. Avery fidgeted with the hem of her sleeve. Do you want to speak to her? I looked down at my hands. Not yet. Maybe not ever. She'll have to come to me when she's ready to listen. Not defend. Avery nodded. Fair. Then she handed me a sealed envelope. This came to the office this morning. For you. No return address. I opened it slowly, heart racing. Inside was a photo. A family photo. One of the few we took before things fell apart. My mother. My father. Whitney. Me. I was about 8. Whitney 6. In the picture, my arm was around her. She was grinning. I looked happy. Behind the photo, a note written in shaky script, I was cruel. But I was also broken. If there's ever a path forward, I want to take it. W. I folded the note and photo gently. Tucked it away. It wasn't forgiveness. But maybe it was the beginning of accountability. Later that day, I returned to the Healing Sisterhood office. A small, bright space on the 6th floor of an old brick building downtown. My team clapped quietly as I entered. We're expanding the support line, Jonah, our program director, told me. Calls have tripled. We've brought on 3 more counselors. Any backlash? I asked. He nodded. Some. But it's mostly noise. Nothing legal. Your NDA is ironclad. And Daniel's servers are airtight. No one's getting to you. That was good. Because I wasn't done yet. I walked into my office, sat down, and stared at the sticky note on my desk. The one I'd written 3 years ago during my lowest point. You are not broken. You are becoming. For the first time in my life, I believed it. At 3:40 p.m., I started preparing for the live stream. It wasn't just going to be a debrief about the wedding fallout. It was going to be the first of a new Healing Sisterhood series, Bloodlines and Boundaries, where we'd explore the unspoken wounds inside good families. Families like mine. That evening, I went live. My face still wasn't on camera. I preferred it that way. But my voice? It was stronger than ever. "Hello, sisters," I began. What happened this weekend wasn't about revenge. It was about reclamation. Of space. Of voice. Of worth. And it's just the beginning. Because I know some of you out there have been silenced for decades. And you're tired of bleeding quietly. So let's speak. The comments began flooding in. I've waited 15 years for someone to say this out loud. My mother gaslit me for choosing therapy over tradition. I'm crying. Finally, someone understands. I kept reading. Listening. And for the first time, I realized. The girl my family tried to erase? She had become the very thing they feared most. Unforgettable. 3 days after the wedding exploded across social media, my apartment felt like a war room and a sanctuary all at once. I was on the phone with a lawyer in Chicago, reviewing new protocols for emergency shelters tied to the Healing Sisterhood network, when a knock interrupted me again. I hung up, expecting maybe another journalist or maybe a volunteer, but instead, when I opened the door, there she was. Whitney. No makeup. No heels. No entourage. Just her. She stood in a wrinkled hoodie, hair pulled back, and sunglasses tucked into the collar like she didn't know what to do with her hands. Her face was blotchy, like she hadn't just cried, but like she'd done it over and over. I didn't say anything at first. "I don't expect you to let me in," she said. Her voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it. "But I need you to hear me." I stepped aside, wordless. She walked in like someone entering sacred ground they didn't believe they deserved. I watched her scan the living room, the modest couch, the folded blanket, the bookshelf that held truth after truth. She looked so out of place here, this wasn't her world. But for once, she wasn't performing. "Did you read my note?" she asked. I nodded. "I read it." She stayed standing. "I didn't come here to justify anything," she said. "I can't. I meant what I said in the note. I was cruel. I acted like power was something I was owed. Like you were a benchmark I had to crush in order to feel worthy. I crossed my arms, not as defense, but because I needed something to hold on to. I didn't just want to win," she said softly. "I wanted to win over you. Because they always compared us. But they never compared you the way they did me. To them, you weren't a threat. And I was desperate not to become what they thought you were. And in doing that, I became everything they were." Her voice cracked. "I used you. I mocked you. I erased you. And when you finally stood up, I watched the mask fall off my entire life. I let the silence fill the room." She took a deep breath. "I resigned from the company. This morning." I raised an eyebrow. "That part one didn't expect." "Dad tried to stop me," she added, almost smiling bitterly. "Told me we could still recover the family image. I told him I didn't want recovery. I wanted reality." I finally sat down. "So what now?" "I don't know," she said. "I've never said that sentence out loud before. I thought of every night I'd sat alone, building Healing Sisterhood. Every insult she ever threw at me. Every glass of wine she poured while making digs that cut deeper than a blade. I'm not ready to be your sister again," I said honestly. "I figured. But I'm willing to see who you are without the mask." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't wipe them away. "I joined a support group in the city," she said. "Not fancy. Just honest people. Like the ones you help." I nodded. "You'll have to go slow." "I will," she whispered. That was enough, for now. Whitney left quietly. No hugs. No tears on the shoulder. But she walked away different. Lighter. And I didn't feel like a victim when I closed the door. I felt like a woman with boundaries. That night, I opened my laptop. A video had gone viral, a college professor referencing my live stream in a lecture titled Digital Reckonings: The Power of Personal Truth in Public Spaces. People weren't just reacting to the wedding anymore. They were using it as a case study. The next day, I received a letter. Not an email. A letter. Handwritten. Thick paper. Expensive. It was from Daniel. He had been quiet since the wedding, supportive, yes, but distant. I figured he needed space, and so did I. But the letter surprised me. Bobbie. The day I met you, you were quiet. Observant. But never weak. I didn't understand then that silence isn't absence, it's survival. I've watched you rise with nothing but your integrity and your voice. You don't owe anyone an explanation for how long it took you to stand. You stood. That's what matters. You may not want anything from me now, but I needed to say this, in writing. I am in awe of you. Always. Daniel. I pressed the letter to my chest, exhaled deeply, and whispered the words no one had ever said to me in my own house. I'm proud of you. The fallout from the wedding came fast. 3 companies withdrew from their contracts with Bennett Holdings. Real estate partners cited values misalignment. The nonprofit I'd once approached for a domestic abuse collaboration, but who turned me away because my image wasn't strong enough, now wanted to merge networks. I declined. Healing Sisterhood would stay independent. Our strength came from the grassroots. The rawness. The stories no one wanted to polish. We were expanding. Minneapolis. Phoenix. Detroit. In every city, more women, more voices, came forward. I wasn't the only Bobbie. We were everywhere. And every one of us had once been told to stay quiet. But not anymore. By early winter, the name Bobbie Bennett wasn't just attached to a viral wedding exposé, it had become a symbol. Not of scandal. But of awakening. I never intended for that. Never wanted it, really. I didn't do any of this for headlines or clicks or morning talk show invites. I did it to survive. To stop shrinking. To rip out the shame stitched into my skin by people who were supposed to protect me. But somehow, by telling the truth at the worst moment, I had given thousands permission to tell theirs. It wasn't just women, either. Men. Teenagers. Elderly people. LGBTQ+ youth. Survivors from polished families with painted smiles and poison behind closed doors. Our inbox overflowed with stories. We created a digital archive, an anonymous storytelling vault where people could submit their truths and know someone would read them. And amid all of that, Healing Sisterhood grew. We hired 10 new staff members. Opened a 3rd legal support branch in Austin. Launched Sisterline, a 24/7 crisis text support system. Daniel helped build the infrastructure. He didn't sit beside me in board meetings or parade himself as a partner. He worked quietly, showing up, never asking for credit. One Friday evening in December, we stayed late at the office, just the 2 of us. Snow fell outside the big bay windows, blanketing Philadelphia in white. The city looked softer, quieter. Daniel leaned against the edge of my desk, arms crossed. Do you ever miss it? I looked up. Miss what? The version of your life where you just disappeared. Where you stayed silent. Kept your head down. I blinked. Every day. His eyebrows lifted. I miss the safety, I explained. Not the silence. Just the safety that came with being invisible. No one expects anything from you. No one attacks what they can't see. He nodded slowly. But look what you built by being seen. We sat in the glow of the desk lamp, the heating humming in the walls. I've been thinking about writing, I admitted. A book. But not about me. About all of this. The stories. The lessons. Something survivors can hold in their hands and say, this was mine, too. Daniel smiled. You already started writing it. You just didn't realize. I turned to my laptop. And maybe, for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was writing to escape. I was writing to build. 2 weeks later, I signed a publishing deal. The Last to Speak. A collection of anonymous stories, journal entries, letters, and essays from our archive. Raw, unfiltered, stitched together with commentary and healing practices. I dedicated it to those silenced in the name of family honor. The moment I held the first advance copy, I cried. Not because it was perfect. But because it existed. And because there had been a time I didn't think I ever would. On the book's release day, I gave a talk at Temple University. Over 900 students filled the auditorium. And when I asked, how many of you have ever been made to feel like your voice didn't matter, nearly every hand went up. Afterward, a girl approached me. Maybe 19. She had red hair, chewed fingernails, and wore a hoodie 3 sizes too big. I haven't spoken to my mom in 3 years, she said. She told me my depression was just me being dramatic. Your story, it made me write her a letter. Not to ask for anything. Just to say I finally forgive myself. I didn't say much. Just took her hand and whispered, you were never broken. She cried. And in her eyes, I saw pieces of the girl I used to be. In early spring, a letter arrived from my mother. I didn't expect one. She'd remained quiet since the wedding, which in some ways was her loudest statement. The envelope was cream-colored. Elegant. Her handwriting still as neat and proper as her posture used to be at every social function. I opened it slowly. Bobbie. There is no excuse for what I let happen under my roof. For the things I said, or the things I allowed to be said. I know a letter doesn't erase years. I also know that you may never want to see me again. And I will respect that. But I wanted you to know. I'm trying to learn. I've joined a support group. I've been listening to your interviews, reading the stories. And for the first time in my life, I see that grace isn't something earned by appearing perfect, it's something you give when you finally understand the weight of your own flaws. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I offer my remorse. Caroline. I folded the letter. I didn't cry. I didn't call. But I sat with it. And that, in itself, was a small miracle. Weeks passed. The book soared to the top of the New York Times bestseller list. Healing Sisterhood received a national award for social impact. Invitations to speak flooded my inbox. And yet, I still came home every night to the same small apartment. Same cat. Same books. The only thing that changed was the woman walking through the door. One day, as I packed for a conference in Seattle, a small notification popped up on my phone. Whitney Langston, new post. Curious, I clicked. It was a photo of her, standing at a quiet lake in Vermont. Simple jeans. A hoodie. No makeup. Just sunlight on her face. The caption read, I used to think silence made me superior. Now I see silence should only belong to peace. Thank you, Bobbie, for making me listen. I sat down. Let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Maybe she wasn't faking it anymore. Maybe she was finally doing the work. A year after the wedding that shattered the mask of my family, I stood inside the Barnes & Noble in downtown Philadelphia, watching a line of readers snake from the ground floor up the staircase. They clutched copies of The Last to Speak in their hands, some of them open to earmarked pages, others pressed tight to their chests like it was a lifeline. The event had sold out in less than 4 hours. I wore a simple navy blue dress and brown leather boots. No stylist, no press team. Just me. Behind the signing table was a banner with the Healing Sisterhood logo and a single quote printed in clean serif font. Your voice has power. Don't be silent anymore. As I signed each copy, people came forward, one by one, not just for autographs, but to say the things they had never been able to before. I left my abuser after 10 years, said a woman in her 60s. My brother never believed me until I showed him your video, whispered a young man with tears in his eyes. My daughter listens to your podcast every night. She's sleeping through the night again. I nodded, held hands, shared small moments of truth. I never knew what to say except thank you. Sometimes, that was all that was needed. And then, just as I was about to close the last book of the evening, I looked up and saw her. Avery. My sister. She stood quietly near the back, wearing a soft cream dress and no jewelry. No entourage. No performance. She gave a small wave. The security guard at the door stepped forward, but I raised a hand. She's fine. Avery approached the table slowly. In her hands, she held a copy of the book. Not for herself, but for someone else. I'm here for Mom, she said softly. She's been reading it at night. She cries at chapter 9. I blinked. She's reading it? Avery nodded. Every page. We stood there, neither quite knowing what came next. She wants to write you, Avery added. Not to explain. Just to thank you. I took the book from her hand and signed it with a quiet heartbeat. To Caroline. May healing find you when perfection no longer matters. I handed it back. She's trying, Avery said, voice trembling. We both are. I gave a slight nod. So am I. She lingered, then turned to leave. But before she disappeared through the glass doors, she looked over her shoulder and asked, Do you think there's a version of us that could exist now? Not the one we pretended to be. Just the one we never had the chance to be? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I walked over to the display shelves and picked up a second copy of The Last to Speak. I handed it to her. Let's find out, I said. She smiled. Weeks passed. Life didn't go back to normal, it moved into something new. Something real. Daniel and I never labeled what we were again. We didn't need to. We worked side by side every day, managing Healing Sisterhood's expansion. We shared dinners, stories, long silences. It was more than a romance, it was a partnership grounded in truth and empathy. In June, I was invited to give a TEDx talk in Denver. The title? Silence Wears Expensive Clothes, How Family Image Can Bury the Truth. I stepped onto that red, mic in hand, and told the story, my story, our story, without flinching. The crowd gave a standing ovation. But more than that, afterward, dozens of people stayed to talk, not about me, but about themselves. About what they'd been through. What they hadn't said. Until now. The video hit 4 million views in 1 week. And the Healing Sisterhood site crashed, again. We smiled. Rebuilt. Reopened. One summer afternoon, while walking through Rittenhouse Square, I passed by a young girl sitting on a bench. She looked no older than 11, hugging a dog-eared copy of The Last to Speak. Her mother sat beside her, wiping away tears with a napkin from a nearby cafe. I didn't say anything. But as I passed, the girl looked up, her voice barely louder than a whisper. Miss Bobbie? I turned. She stood, holding the book like it weighed more than her backpack. My mom says you helped her be strong, the girl said. I want to be strong like her. I crouched beside her. You already are. You just don't know it yet. She nodded. Her mother gave me a tearful smile. And just like that, I kept walking. Not because I was running away, but because I didn't need to be seen anymore to know I mattered. The last photo I ever posted on Healing Sisterhood's social media was taken at sunset. It was me, standing on a hill overlooking the Delaware River, the wind in my hair and my eyes closed. No caption. Just the image. It went viral anyway. Because healing doesn't need spectacle. It just needs to be real. And for the first time in my life, it was. Not perfect. Not polished. But mine. And sometimes, that's the only revenge you ever really need to live, fully, in a truth no one can take from you. Bobbie's journey wasn't just about exposing her family, it was about reclaiming herself. Her voice, once silenced in the shadows, became a beacon for millions who needed to be reminded that their truth matters. That even in the aftermath of betrayal and emotional abandonment, there is still space to rise. Still power in speaking up. If you've ever felt invisible, know this, your story isn't over. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply speak. And let the truth echo. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Has someone ever tried to silence you? How did you reclaim your voice? Subscribe to Revenge Echoes for more powerful stories like this, where justice, healing, and hope collide.